When we think about step families, it's so easy for our minds to jump straight to those old sitcoms, right? But the reality of modern blended families is, well, it's way more complex, a lot more dynamic, and honestly, so much more interesting than any TV show. So today, we're going to dive into the research and really understand what makes these families work.
First things first, let's just get a sense of how common this really is. The research is clear. Having a step-parent is becoming an incredibly normal part of growing up for a lot of kids. This isn't some rare thing anymore. For a huge number of people, this is what the modern family looks like.
Okay, so that leads us to the big question, the one we're really digging into today. We know step families are everywhere, but what's the secret sauce? What are the actual mechanics behind the families that don't just get by, but actually thrive? How do they build that resilience? Well, let's find out.
To get to the answer, we have to look way deeper than those old, simple TV portrayals. And it all starts with understanding that a family, it's like a living, interconnected system.
And maybe the most important key to understanding that system is a concept researchers have a great name for: the spillover effect.
So the framework we're using here is called family systems theory. And what's so cool about it is that it doesn't see a family as just a collection of individuals living together. Nope, it sees the family as a single, interconnected unit, kind of like a machine made of all these smaller, linked parts called subsystems. The health of the whole machine depends on every single one of those parts working well.
And here's the perfect way to picture it. Think of one of those mobiles you hang over a baby's crib. You've got the relationship between the step couple, you've got the bond between the biological parent and their kid, and then you have that new, developing relationship between the step-parent and stepchild. Now, what happens if you just gently touch one of those pieces? The whole thing moves, right? It all shifts, because they're all connected.
And that movement, that chain reaction, that is the spillover effect. So if there's stress in the step couple's relationship, it doesn't just stay there. It spills over, and suddenly there's tension between a parent and their child. But it works the other way too. A real breakthrough between a step-parent and stepchild can send these positive waves through the whole family, bringing a new kind of stability. Nothing happens in a vacuum.
Okay, so if everything inside the family is that connected, what happens when pressure comes from the outside? Well, that's when that spillover effect really gets tested, and the family's boundaries can be pushed right to their limit. And a huge source of that outside pressure, as you can probably guess, comes from interactions with ex-partners. The research shows there are really two totally different paths here. You've got the beneficial kind, putting the kids first, keeping things civil, which really helps stabilize the new family. But then you have the hindering interactions, things like making nasty remarks, which send those negative waves spilling right through the entire family system. And this quote from one of the studies, wow, it just puts such a human face on it. You can just feel the raw frustration from Candace, this stepmother. Her role is being actively undermined by her stepson's biological dad years after the new family was formed. This isn't just a simple disagreement, it's a fundamental challenge to the very legitimacy of her family. Now, for queer stepfamilies, these battles can be even more intense. The research points to some very specific pressures. They often have to deal with biased legal systems during custody battles. Sometimes, former partners will actually weaponize homophobia to attack the new family. And then there's the lack of legal recognition, which can create something called boundary ambiguity. Basically, it becomes unclear who's really in the family and what their official role is.
And all those battles on the outside, well, they can start to trigger battles on the inside. And a really key concept here is something called internalized homophobia. This is what happens when a person starts to believe and absorb the negative, toxic stereotypes that society throws at them, and they turn all that negativity inward on themselves.
And here's where it gets really fascinating. This internal state completely changes how that spillover effect works. The research found that for gay men with low internalized homophobia, a close, strong partnership acts like a shield. It can actually absorb that negativity from the outside world, buffering the relationship and keeping the whole family stable. But, and this is a huge but, look at what happens here. For those with high internalized homophobia, that shield is just gone. The stigma from the outside can completely bypass the closeness of the relationship and directly attack the couple's belief that they even have a future together. That internalized doubt makes the entire family system incredibly vulnerable.
So with all of these challenges, you have to wonder, how do families actually build resilience? How do they fight back? Well, it turns out they get really creative. They start to actively practice doing family in ways that strengthen their own unique structure. And the research points to two really powerful strategies. First, there's intentionality. Think of this as all the concrete, active stuff families do. Then there's redefinition. This is all about the symbolic, mental shifts, the way families think about who they are. Doing and thinking.
So let's break down intentionality first. This is all about taking action. It's things like consciously building a community of friends and supportive relatives, what a lot of people call their chosen family. It's creating your own unique family rituals, whether that's a special holiday tradition or just Sunday night dinners. And it can even mean using legal tools, like adoption or name changes, to formalize and protect those family bonds.
Redefinition, on the other hand, is all about meaning. It's about naming, making a conscious decision about what you call each other based on your actual relationship, not just on biology. It's about politicizing, actively pushing back against those negative stereotypes and advocating for your family. And it's envisioning family, where you literally sit down and decide how your family is going to work, and you just throw out the old rulebook.
And this quote from the research, man, it just perfectly captures the power of redefinition. This isn't just about changing a word. It's this profound statement of identity. By dropping that word step, this family is redefining itself on its own terms. They're claiming their identity as one single, whole unit. We are just a family. It's so powerful.
So you have these two big strategies, intentionality and redefinition. But how do families actually use them? Well, the research found they don't just pick one. They actually combine them to create three really distinct paths to success.
Path number one is called the conscious resistance. You can think of these families as the thinkers, the mental warriors. They are very, very aware of the biases they face. So their main strategy is redefinition. They build their strength from the inside out by forging this powerful shared family identity that stands strong against all that outside negativity.
Path number two is the purposeful awareness. And if the first group were the thinkers, this group is the doers. They lean really heavily on intentionality. They focus on those active behavioral things, building that community, creating those rituals to construct a strong, supportive foundation for their family.
And the third path might just be the most surprising, and maybe the most important, the insulated families. These families didn't really report using a lot of these explicit strategies. But here's the thing, they were just as successful. And this is such a critical takeaway. There is no single one-size-fits-all formula for building a family. Success is measured by love and function, not by checking off some list of strategies. Which leaves us with this one big final thought to chew on. If family isn't just about biology, and if success doesn't come from following just one set path, then what does it truly mean to make a family? Well, all this research seems to suggest that it's an act of conscious creation. It's an act of resilience, of intention, and ultimately of defining love entirely on your own terms.